The hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and so shall the rightful king be known. This single sentence sums up so much of what makes Aragorn an incredible leader, king, and man. Masculinity is one of the most misunderstood concepts in current thought, whether in news media, fiction, or influencer culture. The rejection of many traditional masculine values and the suggestion that seeking them is toxic, commonly perpetrated by large news outlets or just some random blog, has generated a knee jerk reaction that does nearly the same amount of harm. There is no shortage of voices telling young men that they should seek personal success and wealth at all costs, that being a superstar is what men should pursue. These calls are attempting to drown out the opposing cries for men to reject their desire for greatness, to be meek, weak, and gentle. As is all too common in today's political climate, both sides' viewpoints are overreactions to what they dislike about the opposing perspective, and neither outlook has it all right or all wrong. True, virtuous masculinity lies somewhere in the middle between the commonly espoused extremes, in the golden mean between vices. This is the brand of authentic masculinity demonstrated by Aragorn, son of Arathorn, King of Gondor, and his example is one we don't deserve but absolutely need right now. Aragorn is, first and foremost, a protector. That is what both a king and a healer are, someone who cares for and defends the lives entrusted to him. One might be tempted to think that being a king is desirable for the power wielded by the monarch, for the status and comfort that come with royal office. That is a flawed, selfish outlook that Aragorn does not embrace. We know this due to the manner in which he ascends to the throne of Gondor. Due to his royal lineage being the only living heir of Elendil, Aragorn could have walked into Minas Tirith and claimed the throne at any point, but he did not. Rather than seeking power, Aragorn sought his duty, which was to protect those who could not protect themselves. His long years in the north of Middle-earth were spent safeguarding the lands there, such as the Shire, from the many evil forces that still dwelt nearby. When he encounters the hobbits in Bree, Aragorn takes it upon himself to protect them from all enemies, and continues that commitment throughout their journey until assured by Gandalf that the hobbits are in safe hands. Upon reaching Edoras, Aragorn readily joins with the forces of Rohan in their fight against Isengard. And finally, Aragorn and his company provide the decisive blow in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, relieving the siege of Minas Tirith. Upon reaching the White City, having won a glorious saving victory just outside its walls, what does Aragorn do? Does he ride through the streets, displaying the banner of Elendil, proclaiming himself King of Gondor? No. He senses that such an entrance would cause unrest, argument, and strife in a city so long without a king. I will not enter in, nor make any claim, until it be seen whether we or Mordor shall prevail. Aragorn has no interest in seizing power, authority, and status. Acknowledging that there is still much to do, still battles to be fought in defense of the land entrusted to his care, he declines to distract both himself and the current leaders of Gondor by causing political confusion. He still has a job to do. He has a country to protect. That is his kingly duty, which he will carry out whether or not he wears a crown. However, Aragorn does, at Gandalf's insistence, enter Minas Tirith, not so he can claim the throne, but rather because he is needed in the Houses of Healing, where Faramir, Éowyn, and Merry all lie stricken with wounds beyond the skill of normal healers, their encounters with the Nazgul keeping their minds from healing even as their bodies begin to mend. To this point in the story, Aragorn's role has largely been one of a warrior. He defends those entrusted to him, yes, but mostly through violence. Even though he was able to care for Frodo after the hobbit was stabbed on Weathertop, Aragorn's lesser skill and the intensity of the wound precluded him from being able to fully heal Frodo. Not so now. It isn't entirely clear whether Aragorn is now able to heal the three stricken warriors due to him coming into his own, the relatively lesser wounds they suffered, or a combination of both those factors. What is clear is that Aragorn's mission of protection extends beyond war. The ability to be aggressive and violent when needed is necessary and good for those who would defend their friends and country, but the capacity for gentle care must also be present if one is to express full, authentic masculinity. Aragorn became known to the people of Minas Tirith as their king, not only because he arrived to turn the tide of battle in Gondor's favor, unfurling the banner of Elendil and thus striking panic and despair into the hearts of his foes, but also, and more importantly, because he could heal the wounds of war, the worst of injuries that no other man or woman could mend. And soon the word had gone out from the house that the king was indeed come among them, and after war he brought healing. In so tenderly caring for those who needed him most, Aragorn demonstrates perhaps the most crucial point of why his example of masculinity is so needed today. His strengths and abilities are not for himself, but for others. Aragorn spent many years, he's 87 during the War of the Ring, training in warfare, becoming an expert swordsman and unparalleled warrior. The kind of dedication needed to attain such heights of skill is arguably the most necessary trait for those seeking to become proficient in any discipline. Indeed, if you listen to just about any currently popular speaker on masculinity, they will repeatedly drive home the idea that discipline trumps motivation every time. And they are correct. For example, you cannot attain the strength you desire if you only go to the gym when you feel like going. You set a schedule and you maintain the discipline to stick to it. What the influencers who espouse this idea often fail to recognize, or at least do not state outright, is that without a purpose, such training is only building up your own vanity. Desiring and working towards strength is a good thing, but are we doing it so we can physically care for and protect our loved ones? To stay fit and healthy and thus not be a burden on others, or because we want women to be impressed by our pecs? Nothing wrong with wanting to be attractive, of course, but that is not by itself a healthy reason to seek strength. That is because your strength is not for yourself, it is for others. Physical power is important for masculinity, yes, but that is because it allows us to better protect those whom we love. And carrying out that duty is one of, if not the central aspect of a man's job. As long as there have been wars, it has been largely the role of the man, sadly often the young man, to defend his nation, his people. If something goes bump in the night, what kind of man stays in bed while his wife goes to investigate? When the Christ child was in danger, it was Saint Joseph who was entrusted with the mission to bring the Holy Family to safety. By nature, men are granted a larger frame, denser bones, and more muscle mass than are women, and with those physical advantages comes a duty that cannot be denied without denying the very essence of what it means to be a man in relationship with others. Indeed, embracing full, authentic, virtuous masculinity requires one to be in relationship. Not in a relationship, mind you. I'm not saying you can't be manly if you don't have a wife or girlfriend. But human beings do not exist alone. We were not made for ourselves, but rather for each other. As already stated, Aragorn clearly knows this. He seeks the company of those who need him and bonds with them as they journey throughout Middle-earth. We witness his fierce protective love for the hobbits as he chooses to pursue a whole company of Uruk-hai to rescue Merry and Pippin from their cruel captors. In those same scenes, we see his capacity for leadership, as he takes it upon himself to lead the hunt, but also relies on his companions when they are more capable than he. At Helm's Deep, Aragorn gently encourages a boy thrust into combat far ahead of his time, facing nearly certain death.
Then I shall die as one of them!
Not with them, but rather as one of them. The men of Rohan around Aragorn are not just any men. They are, as he says at the Black Gate,
My brothers!
Does he know them personally? No, but he is in relationship with them. He has formed a bond through their common struggle and enemy. Their mission is not divorced from his. He does not hold his own life more dearly than that of any of those standing on the wall with him. That kind of brotherhood, the type that can only be forged in the fires of combat and staring death in the face, is what makes it possible for men to do great deeds on the battlefield. They may fight for king, country, and cause, yes, but more importantly, they fight for each other. Aragorn reminds us of this fact just moments before the final, desperate battle against the innumerable orcs of Mordor.
A day may come when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship.
The downfall of man will not come solely because of the strength of their enemies, but because men forget why they stand their ground against impossible odds, because they lose sight of how vital the bonds of brotherhood are. In saying this, Aragorn reminds us of the necessity of magnanimity, that is, the desire for greatness, but not for one's own sake. Men should strive to do great things. Even if we lead simple, ordinary lives, we should endeavor to be great husbands and fathers, to excel at our line of work, to become the best versions of ourselves that we can be. However, whatever greatness we achieve should not be for our own sake, our own vanity, but for the sake of our loved ones. The longest study on happiness conducted by Harvard found that close relationships, more than money or fame, are what keep people happy throughout their lives. What is the use of a high-paying job that allows us to buy whatever we want if we have forsaken meaningful personal relationships to achieve that level of success? Certainly, the two aren't mutually exclusive, but we only have so much time and energy to pour into the various pursuits of life. If we seek greatness that benefits only us, we fail, no matter how much material wealth and success we obtain. Aragorn's pursuit of greatness was never for his own vanity. If it was, he would have been on the throne of Gondor long before turning 87. Instead, he sought to become an expert swordsman, tracker, navigator, and healer in order to best serve those who would need him when the time came. One might characterize Aragorn's decision in that matter to be humility, and one would be correct, but perhaps not for the reason you might think. As I've mentioned before in previous videos, humility is not self-degradation, but rather an accurate recognition of your own strengths and weaknesses, and the ability to act accordingly. The man with true humility isn't worried about self-image because he knows who he is, he knows his duty and his place in the world. To put it another way, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. Truly knowing your abilities and your duty allows you to think about others more than you think of yourself. As you might expect, Aragorn exemplifies humility throughout the story, but perhaps his most impactful display of this virtue comes after the Battle of Pelennor Fields has been won, and the men of the West must decide their course of action, not yet knowing the fate of Frodo and the Ring. Aragorn understands that, as Éomer states,
"We cannot achieve victory through strength of arms,"
and yet leads the men of Gondor and Rohan to the Black Gate nonetheless. Aware that his forces are much depleted after the battle at Minas Tirith, Aragorn knows that he cannot defeat Sauron's armies head-on, and yet that is exactly what he seemingly sets out to do. The Lord of Mordor sees the approach of the men, led by the standard of Elendil, and believes that the arrogance of the new king has led him to foolishly believe that what remains of Gondor's might can conquer the hordes of orcs still within Mordor. But Sauron miscalculated. Aragorn acknowledges his own relative weakness and inability to win the day, but he refuses to cower in the face of overwhelming odds. Rather, he recognizes that he is not the hero of this story, but that he still has a role to play in these events that are determining the fate of the world. In doing so, he demonstrates a key principle of humility. Our circle of control and influence is small. There are many factors that affect us that are beyond our authority and ability to affect change. The idea that you are 100% in control of your life, that everything is your fault, is an absurd knee-jerk reaction to what some might call victimhood culture, a perpetuation of the harmful myth that many people are simply powerless victims of circumstance and the system. As usual, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. We can assert control, but only to a certain extent. We have to react to things beyond our control, and peacefully accept those which we cannot change. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness, that is life. To this point in the story, Aragorn has made no significant mistakes. He has accomplished great things with the aid of the Fellowship, the Rohirrim, and the Grey Company. The decision to advance on the Black Gate was one made after careful consideration and wise counsel. Aragorn knows that it is possible his actions will have no effect on the outcome of the war, that he will fall in battle with all his men, that Frodo and the Ring will be found, and that all of Middle-earth will be plunged into a second darkness. And it wouldn't be Aragorn's fault. He did all he could. He never accepted defeat, but rather faced it head-on, sword in hand and friends by his side. Can anything more be asked of any man? Aragorn's defining moment comes not as he wins the decisive battle for the good of the world, but rather as he prepares to lose one, so that maybe, just maybe, the world he leaves behind will remain beautiful and free. Why is all of this so important today? Now more than ever, men are bombarded with two drastically differing viewpoints on how men should speak and act, with very little, if any, common ground between the two sides. Aragorn's example of masculinity shreds these false ideals, these absurd extremes, and shows us that yes, we should grow strong, we should succeed, we should strive for greatness, but not for ourselves. Aragorn is, as JRR Tolkien put it in a letter from the trenches of World War I, a great instrument in God's hands, a mover, a doer, even an achiever of great things, a beginner at the very least of large things. Tolkien's idea of greatness as displayed by Aragorn could never be defined by obtaining material wealth or social status, but rather by doing one's duty, loving one's friends, and perhaps even laying down one's life for them. We may never know in this life the consequences of our actions, but if we strive to do great things with magnanimity, humility, and self-sacrificial love, we cannot fail. Ladies and gentlemen, we are made for each other. I cannot emphasize that point enough. We are made to be in relationship with one another, meant to do great things for the sake of those we love. To see this ideal embodied, look no further than Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Lord and King of Gondor. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.